Okay, welcome everybody. My name's Lisa and I'm part of Chesterfield and District Flood Action Group. And this evening's webinar is Preparing for Extreme Weathers, Practical Steps for Stronger Communities. And I think, people in Chesterfield and Derbyshire, we're all very aware of the effects of Storm Babette and flooding, but it's not just floods. And we've had two named storms already this year. It's also lots of other extreme weathers that can affect us. So the format for this evening is I'm just gonna introduce Steph to tell you about Chesterfield and District Flood Action Group, and then we're gonna have two speakers tonight, and I'll introduce those, and then we'll have about three-quarters of an hour at the end for questions and answers, and we'll finish promptly at 8:30. So when we come around to Q&A, I'll ask people to put their hands up and you can ask your question and we'll get the speakers or Steph to answer it, or you can put your questions or comments in the chat if you like. So first of all, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Steph Fucher, who set up Chesterfield and District Flood Action Group and is just going to say a few words about what they're doing. Thanks, Steph.
Hello, so I'm the Steph who sends out emails if you're on the mailing list for Chesterfield and District Flood Action Group. I'm also the Steph who sends out emails if you're on the list for Chesterfield Climate Alliance, and that's the email address that I use for these things. I want to say I've been working with Lisa for yonks for years on different environmental and climate projects.
Mitchell.
And the beginning of last year, a few of us put our heads together and said, what's the main issue to do with climate in our locality? And someone brought the Derbyshire Times, which was on that day was all about floods. So we decided to focus on floods. And we started by talking to people who had been flooded and learned a lot from that. We went on making contacts with people in all the different agencies involved in flood prevention or helping people who'd been flooded, and learned so much about floods. And that naturally led on to thinking about other emergencies, because floods, as Lisa said, don't stand alone. Storms that cause floods cause other problems as well, road closures, power cuts, all sorts of things. And because I got a background in training, I developed a little workshop and ran that on preparing for emergencies at Link's office. It was small, there weren't many people there, but there was a huge interest in getting ready for the emergencies. People are aware that the climate is in chaos and we are heading for all sorts of disasters, and they want to be ready. So coming back to working with Lisa and her skill in putting on a webinar, we decided to do this. We decided to do this at the end of January this year, and here we are. And lots of people have signed up. So I'm delighted to see you all. I hope it's going to be great.
Okay, thanks very much, Steph. So we'll move on to our first speaker. That's Rhea Wilson Sutton, who is the Emergency Response Officer from British Red Cross, Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire. We're very delighted to have Rhea with us, and she's going to talk about how the Red Cross Response Service supports communities during crises. So Rhea, do you want to start sharing your screen, please?
Yeah, will do. Evening, everybody. Could someone just give me a yes or a thumbs up if we can see it?
Yes, we can see that.
Fabulous.
Thanks, Rhea.
Okay, so I'm going to take you through a few different sections. If you have any questions, do please pop them in the chat, or we will come to them at the end of this session as well. So, firstly, I thought I would introduce a little bit about my service, Emergency Response. So I'm a staff member, I'm the Emergency Response Officer. I manage about 35 volunteers across the two counties. And these volunteers are available 52 weeks of the year, 24/7, all depends on volunteer availability. We're a service that provides support to anyone who has had any kind of emergency, whether it be domestic fire, domestic flood, your property is unsafe, say if a car is driven into the front of your home and it's no longer stable, or we've had a few sinking canal boats and things like that. We also cover utility outages, especially prolonged power outages. We have a partnership with National Grid. But our kind of business as usual work is with the fire and rescue service. So they will call us out to provide that practical and emotional support to be that stopgap in those first few hours after an emergency. So, say a fire has happened to a family, it's 2 a.m., they haven't got any friends or family nearby. The fire service can call us. We will come out in our specially adapted vehicles. So in Nottinghamshire, we have a large RV type motorhome, and we also have a 4x4 Land Rover. And in Derbyshire, we have more of a kind of van conversion motorhome. So one of those vehicles will come out, get you on board, get you a hot drink, and talk you through those next steps and just let the person decompress a little bit from the situation. So we can talk them through claiming on their insurance. We can help them contact the council for housing or their private landlords. And we can also speak to them about things like if they got all their clothing, their medication needs, their hygiene needs, are they all sorted? Is there anything that they will need to get through the next couple of days? Do they need to get an emergency prescription per se? So we just make sure they're safe for at least the next 24 to 48 hours. If we can't provide them, say we can only carry so much on one vehicle. So if we can't carry all of the clothing sizes, we only have so much of each. So if it is a very large family or say a house of multiple occupancy, we can kind of give cash assistance just to make sure if we haven't got something they need, they can then be enabled to go and get that themselves. It's like any kind of credit, debit, gift card. So we can provide up to £50 per person per day for a max of 3 days. So that kind of covers if something happens on a Friday evening, you're then covered through until the everything opens back up on the Monday, or we can extend that if, say, something happens on a Good Friday and you've got to wait until the Tuesday because there's the extra bank holidays, things like that. But we are the only charity that provides this offer currently. So we're filling that gap of where people need help in those first few hours and get that bit of support, especially emotionally, because it is a high emotional state to be in. So, as I said, we respond to fires, floods, severe weather. Obviously, we're going to touch on that a little bit today. That can be below zero freezing temperatures or also extreme heat waves. As I said, dangerous structures. There's also terrorist attacks, human trafficking, health emergencies, just like the support we provided during the COVID pandemic in vaccination centres and doing welfare checks. The utility disruptions, transport emergencies. So say if there is a train crash or an airplane crash, anything like that, we can support the survivors and also the friends and family. And we also support in rest centres and emergency centres set up by the local authority after evacuations, whether that be due to flooding or, say, a wildfire, large-scale industrial fire, or could be someone maybe has dug up a World War II bomb in their garden, so they have to evacuate the surrounding streets. Anything around there we support with. So we're providing that humanitarian assistance to those in crisis. We specialise in that psychosocial support, that immediate practical support, refreshments. So if they are on the street and they haven't had a meal for hours, we can provide something small like little pot noodles, or biscuits, chocolates, all the kind of things that we can carry on the vehicle that last a long time. And if for some reason they can't provide any housing at the council, the private landlords can't provide anything, and they haven't got any friends or family to stay with, and say they're not friendly with the neighbours, so the neighbours don't want to support either, we can then look at providing that short-term shelter as well. So we can provide a hotel for the night or the weekend. If we can't get any volunteers out, it's very unlikely because we do page the 3 closest teams. So we do work with our neighbouring counties as well. It works with, depending on where our emergency vehicles are, and there is one in at least every county, it'll work out from there. So they'll page the closest team. So if we're doing Chesterfield, Derbyshire, and then if we're paging after 10 minutes, we haven't heard anything, we'll page Derbyshire again, and then maybe South Yorkshire, and then Derbyshire, South Yorkshire, and depending on where it is, could be Staffordshire, Leicestershire, Lincolnshire, whoever's closest. And then if we haven't got anyone in those 3 teams, we can then go on and say, we can't get anyone to physically deploy right now, but we can provide telephone support. So if the person agrees to that, we can then call them on their phone and just kind of talk them through those next steps, at least have a good idea of what they need to do to get themselves back on their own 2 feet. And the person who's providing telephone support gives us that time where if they do say, actually, they need a cash card or they need further support, we need to deploy, we have a bit more time to find a team, or the team might deploy, say if it's 3 p.m. on a Wednesday, it might be that people are finishing work at 5 and we can get volunteers afterwards, or if it's 3 a.m. in the morning, that we can get someone out in the early morning as well. So an example of when we have supported in Chesterfield was in October 2023 during Storm Babette. A rest centre was opened in the leisure centre, and we supported about 50 residents in that rest centre, providing that emotional, practical support, giving out clothing, providing food for pets, food for babies, and just making sure, say they needed to get their phone charged, we had phone chargers, we were helping people call 111 to get emergency prescriptions, so all those kinds of things. And I believe, if I remember right, the rest centre was open for about 2 to 3 days, and we did have volunteers on shift to cover the entire time that was open as well. So we're here to talk about being prepared and building that community resilience. So resilience means different things to different people, and it basically means your ability to adapt and change to your environment, making connections to support you, having resources ready to support yourself or your community, and having an understanding of things that might come. So having an idea of climate change, severe weather, are you in a flooding zone, those kind of things, being prepared knowledge-wise as well as resource-wise. So a few emergencies that we can prepare for. I am going to share these slides that can go out afterwards, so all of these links to the website people can then access. So before a flood, a few things that you can do. You can sign up to your flood alerts. You can also make an evacuation plan. So what route out of your house, where would your kind of place of safety be? Where would you be planning to go first? Even if you have an awareness of what are the kind of designated venues for rest centres in your area. You can also prepare an emergency kit, which we will go into a bit more detail a few slides on. And making sure your insurance policy meets your coverage needs. And then these are kind of more expensive sometimes, but preparing your home to minimise flood damage. There is some examples on this link, but things like maybe moving electrical sockets higher up than where water would flood into your home. Obviously, you don't know for definite where that would be, but you can move them upwards to try and alleviate some damage to your power utilities. And before a power outage, you can check weather warnings, because again, that might be due to high winds, rain, storms, or what they might call sticky snow on the power lines that will cause an outage in your area. Know who your electricity provider is, and then you can go onto the website and you can see that it's logged on there, that there is a power outage in your postcode area, and they might even say how long they think it's going to last for, and how long it'll be until people are out to work on it. For those that require a bit of extra support during a power cut, you may be eligible to be added to your energy supplier or network operator's priority service register. This is a great thing to be a part of because, say, National Grid call us out to a power outage. It's not likely that everyone's going to be out in the streets and we'll meet them straight away. It's likely people are just getting on with it in their homes. So National Grid will kind of pass us a list and say, these are the addresses on our priority service user list. Can you check on these people first and do a welfare check? And then door knock the rest of the properties afterwards. And also unplugging non-essential items. So moving on to preparing for a heat wave. So again, checking your weather warnings. Is there a yellow, amber, red alert in your area for high temperatures? Just so you can be prepared. You can get things in like a stock of food and drinking water. You might go out and panic buy some fans or an air conditioning unit. Look after your health. Make sure you've got all the medication you might need. If you have any chronic illnesses, you might want to consult your doctor about how best to support yourself during a heat wave. And also you might want to check on vulnerable people around you, check in on your neighbours, check in on family members, just to make sure that they have all the support they need as well. Preparing for winter weather. Again, checking your weather warnings is a great thing to do. Download the Met Office app. Make sure you know what's going on. Preparing an emergency kit. Making sure that your heating system is okay, making sure your boiler's fit and ready to run, draft proofing your home, so make sure you've got all these draft excluders around your home, make sure your doors are properly sealed, stay informed, especially if travelling. Again, if it's severe weather, it's likely only travel if necessary, and again, checking on those vulnerable neighbours and family members. So, as I said, preparing an emergency kit. So there's a few kits that you can make. That can be one to store at home, one to take with you while you're out, and one to have in your car. So with your at-home kit, it's good to have a list of contact numbers, emergency contact numbers. There should be a paper copy in case your mobile phone loses power. You might want to purchase a battery-operated torch and spare batteries, or a wind-up torch, a battery-operated radio with spare batteries, or a wind-up radio. You can even find these things online that are like a solar power bank. They're also a wind-up torch and they're also a radio. So you can also get these great techie bits that are all in one. You'll want any essential medication and maybe even a small first aid kit, 3 days supply of bottled water and ready-to-eat food and snacks. Copies of important documents, especially insurance documents and ID documents, and even keep those in a waterproof bag. You might want some stationery. This even says a penknife and a whistle. So these are all suggestions. It can be as kind of hardcore as you want it to be as your emergency preparedness pack. Spare keys to your home and your car if you have them. Spare glasses and contact lenses. And if you do have a baby or any pets with you, supplies and extra ones for those. So on the move, if you're out and about, making sure you're checking that weather forecast and packing suitable clothes. Again, some ready-to-eat food and a warm drink in a flask or a bottle of water. Mobile phone and its charger, and maybe a power bank as well. Any essential medication, glasses, contact lenses, your cash and credit cards, and a list of emergency contact numbers. And again, those baby and pet supplies if they are on the move with you. Your emergency car kit, so something that you'll keep in your boot at all times in case you need it. Ice scraper, de-icer, snow shovel, a map, an actual physical map, blanket and warm clothes. You might also want to keep a few maybe like power bars in there, just something easy to grab. I mean, I like having that kind of stuff for if you do break down, because you know recovery is going to take hours. And then you might also want a first aid kit in there. Again, a torch is a great thing to have with you if you do break down and it's dark at night. And also a radio I mean, if your car dies, at least you've got a radio to hear updates as well, and jump leads in case you are able to just jump start your car to keep on your way. So we've kind of talked a little bit about preparing yourself, preparing, if you all prepare yourselves, you'll become a more resilient community. So we're thinking about how can we be more resilient as an organisation? And again, all the resources, I can share links to these. So we're thinking about climate adaptation within the British Red Cross, just like anyone else would be. So preparing for climate change and how it might affect us now and in the future. So aiming to minimise harm and take advantages of any opportunities associated with a changing climate. So we have got a climate change risk assessment, so understanding what climate change means for the British Red Cross emergency response and the people and places that we support. We also have the climate adaptation framework, so that will be outlining our vision and what we're aiming to achieve in the long, medium and short term within emergency response. So our role as it sits today, we can pretty much tick that we're fully integrated in the response and respond part of the resilience cycle. However, we would like to get more expanded within the preparedness and the recovery. So how can we help our communities prepare for climate emergencies? We want to put together some advice and resources, and specifically some resources for young people. And then we do step into the recovery already. Here is one of our Leicestershire volunteers, Warren, and another volunteer, Nicole, giving out cleaning up material after Storm Henk in January 2024. So we are helping in the kind of recovery from flood events and things like that already. But trying to support communities in recovery is something we can help to plan on in the future as well. Because all of this kind of works towards our 2030 strategy and vision. So once we're more well set within the whole of the community resilience cycle, we'll be more adaptable to those climate emergencies ourselves, and therefore helping our communities do that as well. So there's a few resources that people can look upon. Again, these are all available on our website, but I will share links that can be shared afterwards. So briefing notes on climate change adaptation and personas of vulnerable groups, news updates on emerging research and tools, and also some great fact sheets. Some good fact sheets, especially about how to support yourself during heat wave and during cold weather, severe weather, and supporting yourself, what is climate change and how you can prepare for it as well. So I don't know if I've absolutely speeded through that way too quickly, but that is my presentation, and I will let us pass on. And if you have any questions, I'll have a look in the chat in a moment once I've stopped sharing my screen, and we'll hit on those right at the end.
No, thank you, Rhea. That was really clear and some really good resources and advice there, and some very impressive support by the Red Cross. So just before I move to Rhea, just to say, I forgot to say in the introduction that this event is supported by Links Chesterfield and North East Derbyshire CVS, as well as Transition Chesterfield. So sorry about that. So we'll now move on to our second speaker, Dr. Kara MacRae, who is a rewilding farmer in North East Derbyshire and a climate campaigner. And she's going to explore how we can empower ourselves to handle emergencies. So, and she's also supported by Peter, who's doing the tech. So Peter, if you want to start sharing now, and Kara, if you want to unmute and start your presentation. Thank you. We can see that. Great.
Okay, are we ready to go?
Yes, go.
Yeah, everyone can see the slides. Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Righto. Good evening. I'm Kara MacRae Hinckley. We're going to talk tonight about emergencies, how we're going to plan and prepare so that we're safe, and how we're going to plan and prepare so everyone's safe. Now, it's a difficult subject one way or another, but by engaging with each other, we'll feel empowered. Next slide, please. At the end of the talk, I hope you'll be able to feel able to cope, to be able to be calm and self-resilient and able to help others in an emergency. Next slide, please. Who am I to talk about this? Well, I'm a retired academic, as Lisa said, climate campaigner and farmer. I've been rewilding my farm for climate mitigation for over 40 years. And yes, I am prepared for emergencies. Next slide, please. Emergencies are going to get worse. Here are some examples. 2022, we've had record temperatures and heat waves. 2023, we had flooding, particularly Storm Babette. 2024, we had prolonged wet weather affecting harvests. And in 2025, we had drought, water shortages, and crop failures. This week, we've had Storm Chandra wreaking havoc and flooding in the West Country, and 1,000-mile-long snowstorms and temperatures of minus 25 degrees C in the USA. Next slide, please. And snow here may become more extreme. This slide is a view of the road outside my house a couple of years ago, and I'm in the farm vehicle. And I expect to be snowed in or iced in for 1 to 2 weeks each year. So I'm prepared. Next slide, please. This is the usually innocuous stream, Smalley Brook, that divides my farm straight down the middle. And this is what happened during Storm Babette. Again, I'm in the farm vehicle, but I wouldn't have dared to go through the strong current, even in a tractor. Floods caused thousands of pounds worth of damage on the farm, washing away roads and access to the house and farm buildings. Next slide, please. Flooding may be worse in future. We may experience cloudbursts and severe flooding like that seen in Europe and elsewhere. But in the short term, we can't do much about weather extremes except prepare. And farmers are used to preparing. We make hay, silage for winter feed. We harvest grain and straw. So preparing or prepping is normal for us. And yes, I know prepping has a bad press. It's meaning twisted to describe North Americans that have disappeared off-grid into the woods. But that's not us. In reality, prepping is normal. We've been doing it for years as people, hundreds of years, for winter supplies, think cheese making, pickling, preserving, smoking, and keeping stocks of food in our larders and pantry. It's only relatively recently that we've come to depend on supermarkets, having a constant supply of food and full shelves. But remember COVID. And even in normal times, we import around 50% of our food, with a 7-day just-in-time supply chain. What happens if the logistics fail because of power outages or cyber attacks or shipping problems? Next slide, please. So in the climate crisis, we must adapt. It makes sense to prepare and be self-reliant. We must adapt to our changing world and plan ahead for emergencies. Let's take a look at personal preparations, community preparations, and national preparations for emergencies. Next slide, please. There are 2 types of emergencies: an immediate threat, where you may need to evacuate, and a medium to long-term threat, which takes longer to resolve. And there's not much we can do about the latter, but wait for help or resolution of the problem. Next slide, please. Well, there may be a gap between the onset of an emergency and help arriving or getting to everybody. Often local people will be first responders, helping each other. In a medium to long-term emergency, such as a power outage or cyber attack, it may be some time before power is restored and services are restored, and you're expected to wait at home for 48, 70 hours, but it might be longer. Next slide, please. So it makes sense to prepare and prepare well. If you're prepared, you'll be able to wait comfortably and safely. And if you have enough stocks, you'll be able to help others as well. So if you don't put off making a start on this, and I'm not sure how many people actually have made a start, now's a good time. It's easy to make excuses, but, let's get on with it. Next slide, please. So here we have essentials, and I know Rhea's been through some of this, so I'll skip over this fairly briefly with the next slides. As well as an emergency plan, you'll need a go bag for your car, and a stay shelf. And let's have a look at the stay shelf. Here are a few things I put together yesterday in a moment. I try to keep a stock of tinned food that's ready to eat and doesn't need cooking, although a camping stove is handy if your accommodation is suitable. The way to do this is just to buy an extra item every week for your stay shelf, if you can afford to. What I have here would last someone probably 48 hours comfortably. But if you have to leave, next slide please, use your go bag, and I know Rhea's mentioned hers, but here is the European Union Commissioner for Preparedness with her go bag, and her link is amusing and pretty accurate actually. Next slide please. The European Union are way ahead of us on preparedness. As well as having an EU Commissioner for Preparedness, they have a National Preparedness Day. Preparedness is on the school curriculum, and they've distributed 450 million emergency home kits. Next slide, please. And if you need quick advice in an emergency, I recommend this handy readiness card that fits in your phone case. And it just gives you priorities, what to pack if you're evacuated, how to keep warm, and how to keep calm, what to prioritize. It's pretty handy actually, and available free. Next slide, please. So if we're really going to prepare properly, we need to network, and in an emergency, networking is essential to keep in touch with each other and to keep in touch with community services. Next slide, please. So we have a personal network, which is individual to individual. Could you stay in touch with your family and friends in an emergency? Do you know your neighbours? And in addition to this, you may well be networking with strangers as well as people you know. And this is our immediate personal network. Next slide, please. If we're not at home, we'll need to find our way to emergency safe places and need to reach out to others and to community groups for assistance. If we're in an unfamiliar town, we may not know where to go. In fact, I'm not sure I'd know where to go in Chesterfield. So how would we get that information? I heard a story recently about tourists in a remote village in Lincolnshire, and these tourists are often caught in rapidly rising floodwater. And residents found that people could be directed to safety, in this case a church on high ground, by putting arrows and signage on lampposts and on footpath gateposts. Maybe we should have arrows on our lampposts for cool spaces, warm spaces, safe places, maybe with a QR code and a link for updates or an emergency WhatsApp link. Next slide, please. Similarly, QR codes and WhatsApp groups could be accessed if people gathered in recognised places of safety, often churches. And I'm going to try and show you something here. Often churches, which are promoting cool places during heat waves. And I don't know if you can see this, but there's a movement now. Churches are cool. So this is a new movement saying that everyone's welcome in churches that are cool, including pets, particularly dogs. Also, Free Equity advocates shady places in towns. But what else can be done in emergencies? Next slide, please. Well, farmers can help. We're rarely asked to help in emergencies, but we have lots to offer. Underutilised resources, and we're overlooked in emergencies. But most farms have private water supplies like this drinking water quality spring on my land on the left. We could easily fill Bowser's or 1,000-litre cubes at short notice, and no plastic bottles. Similarly, farms could grow salad under lights indoors. That's already done, of course. Or with 6 to 12 months' notice, start to grow vegetables, as in this community farm, High Ashes Farm. And we need more of this for food security, preparedness and resilience. So please include farmers, small to medium-sized farms, in the plans. We're ready and willing to help and have the resources. And include us also in the grassroots community groups. Next slide, please. So Here we have a horizontal network with lots of community groups, but I'm not sure how well they communicate with each other. Chesterfield Links does this job, but it has 500 groups. How does that operate in emergencies? And Chesterfield Volunteer Group also has admirable aims. But how do these people connect with other little groups that may not be formal groups as such, like the small community kitchens that are dotted all over Chesterfield? And how would these connect in an emergency situation? Do we need a dedicated group or a WhatsApp group for administrators in these groups? Do we need a dedicated umbrella resilience group for networking? Next slide, please. How good is our communication and networking vertically? As individuals to parish, district and county councils, how good's our communication there? And to MPs, that's vertical communication and networking. Do we feel that we can have effective conversations about climate emergencies or preparedness with these organisations? And how good is this vertical networking in the other direction, them to us? Somehow it still feels ineffective, as if the climate crisis, emergencies, preparedness measures are something that would rather not be discussed. But we must have these discussions at all levels. National preparedness should be discussed. Should we be stockpiling food nationally? Stockpiling food as households, both of which happen in Europe. Next slide, please. So last week, these articles appeared about the polycrisis, and these are from good sources. The first on the left was published by DEFRA. There's a long report, which is 42 pages long. And I don't know if you can see it. This is the short version. If you can see me on your camera, this is the short version. And this is research by the Joint Intelligence Committee, that's MI5 and MI6. The last article on the right here was published by the United Nations. So we face food insecurity, water bankruptcy, biodiversity collapse. Surely now it's the time for discussions. Surely it is. Next slide, please. Well, the National Emergency Briefing, NEB, hosted a series of lectures at Westminster Hall to inform MPs and the public of the challenges we face and the solutions available. It was stark news, but it outlined what can be done to affect change. The NEB speakers, next slide please, were top academics, experts in their fields, who gave excellent advice. Similarly, the Climate Majority Project, CMP, is promoting adaptation, safer, strategic adaptation for emergency resilience, with an emphasis on personal resilience. They are at pains to suggest, though, that preparedness is not instead of mitigation. Next slide, please. We can prepare at national level by stockpiling food nationally, as I mentioned, as other countries do, and we have done until recently. This will be our national preparedness. But we must also mitigate climate change, our preparation for the future, by working with nature and restoring biodiversity, and convey this message from us individuals through to local, regional, national, and global networks. And we can act now here locally to restore nature, and there is hope. For example, we could follow the excellent example of the City of Trees project, started and supported by Chris Stringer, which has reduced flooding by natural flood management in Stockport and Manchester. And if it works there, it can work here. Now, if we introduce beavers to the Upper Don and Rother catchments, we could reduce flooding even more. Do you know beavers can reduce peak flow height by 60%? Great stuff. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. So to conclude, we can be prepared and ready to deal with emergencies. We can do something to reduce the impact of emergencies. We can support nature-based solutions. We can mitigate climate emergencies through influencing our network of politicians at local and national level. So we can affect change and outcomes by acting now, preparing and adapting for our future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Cara. That was a really fantastic presentation. Scary polycrisis, but with lots of great advice and some very thought-provoking questions about what we do as a community. So thanks, Peter, as well. If you want to stop sharing now, great. Thank you. Two excellent presentations. So now is the time for questions. So if you'd like to ask a question, please could you use if you go down to the bottom and in the react button, you can see a little there should be a raise hand button which enables me to see it better rather than people waving, or you can post it in the chat. And I think we've had a question there from Brian. Brian, would you like to voice your question just for the purpose of the recording? That would be helpful. Thank you. Are you there, Brian? Do you want to unmute? Don't know if Brian can. Okay, go on.
Right. Sorry, I had a job unmuting myself. Yeah, I was just thinking about the scale of things, really, and thinking about the time. Was it last autumn but one? The area in eastern Spain, where several hundred people were drowned by the river and the storms flooding down there. And I just wonder how that kind of scale, how do we vision humanity coping with that kind of scale of thing? I'm not sure what my detailed thoughts are.
Yeah, no, thank you, Brian. Who would like to have a go at that? Cara, do you want to answer?
Right. So it is possible to reverse what's happening, and there are lots of projects that are in the pipeline and some have already been started. For example, there's a landscape recovery strategy which the government is piloting this year, and then some of that's going to happen locally. Now, I'd love to see that extended. That's going to happen in the Derwent Valley catchment and the Amber catchment, but I'd love to see that extended over the watershed into the catchment for the Chesterfield area. And if those nature restoration projects were done, you would be able to stop that sort of peak flow going down the valleys and causing that sudden flooding that you're talking about in eastern Spain. And all that's needed really is just the will to do it and the agreement to do it. And at some point it has to happen. I mean, the biggest barrier, I think, is actually just trying to discuss this because, it is scary. But if we do things now, then we can actually prevent that sort of situation that we were talking about happening in eastern Spain, because there are just lots and lots of natural barriers, lots of trees, and it just slows everything down. It's possible to do it. So somehow or other, we have to get this message that we, the public, all of us here on this Zoom, we actually want to discuss it, and we want these things to happen, and we want them to happen much more quickly than they seem to be happening. In other words, we, the public, support these sorts of actions. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Rhea, I don't know if you want to come in, because I guess we, it's not just, Storm Babette was catastrophic, but if climate change, whatever we do, things are going to get worse. And we may be faced with, power outages, food shortages, storms, flooding, all at the same time. The emergency service could be completely overwhelmed. I guess, what do we do in those cases, I guess? Sorry, Rhea, I don't know if you, it's a difficult question. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'll just touch a little bit on what Cara was saying about the environment. So that kind of fast flowing flash floods, we need to try and limit those by basically slowing the water down and not letting it all build up at surface level, causing that surface flooding. We need those natural spaces where it can kind of almost get trapped in trees and slowly trickle down, and then also soaking in through the soil and the ground as well. So trying to get rid of have less paving. Maybe don't pave over your entire garden. Try and have more natural spaces. Keep your trees. But when it comes to those having more severe weather and the power outages, again, it's that focus on trying to be as self-resilient as possible and having that knowledge of what are the risks in your local area. What is your personal risk? Is your street within the flood maps on the Environment Agency? Just knowing little things like that and preparing yourself of how is your family going to evacuate? Do you know where you'd be going? Do you know where your local rest centres are that the council do have pre-designated? Usually some kind of sports centre or school hall, but also people do tend to gather in those places of safety. So down the pub, sometimes it's hard to get a street from the pub into a rest centre because they feel cozier and more looked after and within their community there. Getting to know your community as well. I know someone mentioned in the chat about flood wardens, trying to link in with those local community groups. Honestly, I need to do better at that myself as at an organisation level. And know your neighbours, make sure your family has a plan as well as yourself. Just focus on that self-resilience to build that community resilience to then hopefully one day national resilience, who knows.
Thank you. And, this is a real wake-up call, I think, for all of us. I'll come to Anita and Rose in a second, but there are a couple of comments and questions in the chat. Kel has mentioned Derbyshire Emergency Volunteers, run by Derbyshire Emergency Planning Office. I don't know if, Kel, you want to say anything about those, or Rhea? Where is Kel?
Yeah, I can. It's a semi-new initiative the Derbyshire County Council's got. Derbyshire Emergency Volunteers, I'm one of them. They've been going for years and years and years. We were available for the recent floodings this year, last year, previous years. Rest centres are set up pretty quickly over at Queen's Park Centre. The bombing not bombing, but the explosives that found, the text alerts go out for volunteers for that. So if people want to get involved, there's many volunteering opportunities for that. However, this is on flooding. Before Christmas, Derbyshire County Council had a few meetings about flood wardens. I think it's a newish initiative they're doing. They've seen how it works in Nottinghamshire. I believe there's over 200 flood wardens in Nottinghamshire, and there's only about 50 in Derbyshire entire. It's not really a project that's got off the ground, but they want to increase that. In Nottinghamshire, the local residents actually have authority to close the roads and things like that off, so they can take action. Highways and the higher-ups in Derbyshire County Council have been hesitant of allowing residents to do that. It seems to be a change. So it's probably a good thing to get involved with now, because things are changing. So I think on social media they put out requests for help, more volunteers. I think everywhere is wanting more volunteers. So yeah, there's things out there. So
lovely.
Yeah.
And when we'll send out the slides with the recording and also a list of resources to everybody that's signed up for this. Sorry, Anita, to keep you waiting. Do you want to go first?
Rhea button, I think
that's it. You're fine.
Okay. Yeah. No, just touching back on the national emergency briefing that Kara mentioned. I don't know if anybody else actually watched that. It was incredible, and I'm appalled that more MPs attend. However, anybody who follows Zero, I will know that there's big campaigns to get a reduced version of that presentation out for national viewing. So if you have a look at that website, there's a letter there to encourage the government to go ahead with an emergency briefings locally to people, and it's encouraging people to look for venues where they might be able to put out this reduced film. I think it's due out in April, and to encourage people to make their own kind of climate emergency groups, where they can come together and support one another, and a bit like your cold centres and your hot, where you can keep cool and keep warm and that sort of thing. So certainly the eco group I'm involved with in Erewash has got some members involved with that. So yeah, just really wanted to highlight that national emergency briefing was an eye-opener. I like to think I'm reasonably switched on, but the breadth that they covered, I found that incredible. That's it really. Thank you.
you. Yeah, no, it's really shocking, and everybody should watch it for sure. So we will circulate that link in the resources. Rose, would you like to go next?
Thank you. I'll just lower my hand. So first of all, I had no idea how much the Red Cross did. So thank you for that. That was very informative and actually reassuring. But I imagine they just need to expand massively now because obviously with the more emergencies, they're going to require more. But also very grateful to Cara and her slides. I was going to make a similar point to Anita, but then another one as well. So I'm pleased that Anita started with that. It's important that we also get our councillors to see the national emergency briefing too. I only watched them last night actually, and it only takes a couple of hours, took maybe 2.5 to watch them all, and it is very absorbed. But my main point from that as well was linked to the 0 hours thing about the climate and nature bill. So really they're trying to dovetail into each other and getting people to get their MPs to watch the briefing and support the climate and nature bill. Because once we've got that, then we're getting more preventative measures that Cara mentioned. So really it's all starting to link in. And just very grateful for this presentation and starting this thinking that we need to get our heads in now. We need to be preparing, and it shouldn't be oh, what are you doing that for? It's just common sense at this stage, isn't it? So thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you, Rose. And Annie, I know you've got a question in the chat. Would you like to voice your question just for the purpose of the recording? If you can unmute. Are you there, Annie? Don't know if Annie can hear me.
Yes,
there you
I
are.
can
Go
hear
on.
you. Sorry, it's on the phone, so very small. Yes, yesterday I was at school at St. Mary's, and we came to talk about how you need community cohesion, and I gave them the example of floods, and they're all really, I realized how traumatized some of them still were from getting home on that Friday night. And there must have been an incident with the bus as well and with the police, where the bus driver didn't follow police instructions, and they showed me a video how the water was coming up in the bus to the steps, and they were really scared and just screamed in the bus. How can we perhaps get geography departments involved in having young people being flood wardens? And perhaps it's just an idea. Would that be something, rather than screaming and being incapable of doing anything? How can we get a preparedness with students and young people?
Cara or Rhea, would you like to answer that? Cara, do you want to go?
Okay. I mean, I think that's an absolutely great idea, because obviously young people are, they're involved with it already. They've experienced it. They're very canny about it as well. I think they may not say very much, but I think they probably know far more than we give them credit for. So I think it's absolutely a great idea. I don't know. I mean, you're at St. Mary's. Maybe you'd like to start something there and start the ball rolling. I think it would be wonderful.
I think I might approach the geography department. Yeah.
Rhea, do you work with young people in schools at all? Is that something the Red Cross does?
That would definitely in the community education service, which at the moment we're currently in something called Project Mosaic, where community education and crisis and community resilience are kind of coming together to merge to just be under a new name called UK Resilience. One thing I would mention on that for young people as flood wardens, I'm not sure what the rules are around them. I know with emergency response volunteers, we ask for people to be at least 18 but I'm not sure what the intricacies of that are. We'd have to speak with the local council in terms of what the barriers are, who can apply. I do think that's a great idea, increasing that education within young people about being self-resilient, making your family resilient, going home, talking to their parents, making a family evacuation plan. If we have to be evacuated from school, what are we going to do in that situation? How are we going to contact you? Where's our meeting point? Things like that, just so they're always prepared. And also the schools, in terms of flooding, there'd be some kind of business continuity plans in there and evacuation plans as well.
Thank you. And Sandra Pink has put in the chat as well about how much climate change is on the curriculum. That is an issue, but preparing young people at least for the possibility of extreme events is a really good idea for schools to do, because it's a really scary prospect and it could actually save lives. Any other questions? I mean, I've got one question for Rhea and Kara, and that's about vulnerable groups. I mean, for a lot of people on this call, I suspect, we're all quite able to look after ourselves and get out of our homes and take our grab bags. But there's an awful lot of people who are disabled or elderly or frail, who may not have, family or neighbours nearby that can help them. Or so, there's a lot of groups and individuals who are very vulnerable. And I think, Rhea, you probably experienced some of this when you helped at Storm Babette, it's where are the support services for all those groups? And I don't know, Sandra, you got your hands up. Did you want to come in on this? Because obviously Links works with a lot of those groups. Do you want to unmute, Sandra? Can you unmute?
It wasn't particularly about that. So if you want to finish, I'm happy to come later.
Okay. So Rhea or Kara, have you got thoughts on that? Because Kara, you touched on this in your presentation about, it's not just the personal networks, it's the community networks, isn't it? To make sure everybody's supported.
Yes. I suggested that people should get to know their neighbours and people in their local communities, and then they'd know who to look out for. And I think vulnerable people, as far as I know, actually have their own personal plans for emergencies, such as flooding or fire or whatever. I think there is a special section to deal with that. And vulnerable groups actually do want to be involved. I think I sent something for our appendix because there wasn't really time to discuss it within the presentations. And from what I can see, their motto is, don't do anything for us without us. So they want to be fully involved with whatever's decided, whatever plans there are. And I think probably Rhea will know more about the detail of that than I do.
Rhea?
One thing I will mention is one thing that always comes up in many a meeting, again, is defining a vulnerable person. It is a difficult thing to do because there'll be the standard groups that always come to mind. However, when we're dealing with emergencies, often a person who isn't vulnerable may become vulnerable through the circumstance. And it's all about their personal level or capacity to cope with the incident. So again, it's building that self-resilience means your capacity threshold increases to be able to cope with that emergency event. In terms of kind of vulnerable groups, in terms of chronic illnesses, disabilities, mobility issues, all those things, personal experience, seen many of them in rest centres and at domestic fires, and you just have to make sure you personalise that support to them. Again, it's not on yourselves as general public. There will be someone at rest centres designated to give that support, and we can then signpost to those specialists, whether it be community groups or other charity organisations that can help them in that longer term support, especially recovering from an emergency.
Thank you. Sandra, do you want to go and ask your question now? And Paul, I've seen you as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just an observation, really. I mean, we at Links, I'm the advice and project manager at Links, we were very involved with COVID. We didn't close. And of course, we didn't have any warning about COVID. And I've always thought, particularly in Chesterfield, how people came together, little neighbourhood groups, like the food banks, people delivering meals, and that was done without any preparation. So I just think what we could do with preparation would be even more amazing. We kept people informed about what was happening, where to go if they needed help. We sent out all sorts of bulletins. But there were other groups doing, lots of groups doing that in Chesterfield. So I think the will, in a way, is there. It's just that we have to kind of help people to do it. They often don't know where to start. So at Links, that's something that we want to do, because we do have those facilities and we do have those connections. But I'm quite hopeful that we can do it. I have that faith, I think.
Thanks, Sandra. Yeah, and in Storm Babette, to be fair, a lot of community people came forward, churches help. People I think are willing to help, but it's having the network so it's better organised and we're better prepared. Paul, did you want to come in? Do you want to unmute? You're still muted. Do you want me to try and unmute you? Or can you do it yourself? No, you're still, let me just see if I can, let me just, I can't unmute you. Paul, you're gonna have to do it yourself, sorry. Okay, do you want to put it in the chat if you can't unmute? We still can't hear you. I was actually going to ask, because I know there's several people here who represent churches, and Cara's and Rhea have pointed out, that they can operate as cold and warm spaces and can provide a lot of community support. And I suspect the churches in Chesterfield are already doing quite a lot and organising. Unfortunately, we can't hear Paul, but I'm sure he'd have something to say about that. Paul, if you want to put it in the chat, I'm sorry, I can't seem to unmute you for some reason. Okay, Rhea, sorry, do you want to come in?
I just wanted to quickly come in a little bit more about power outages. I've just noticed a couple of comments about like mobile networks and cyber attacks and things like that in the chat. And I think there's some awareness building to be done around kind of the outcomes after a large scale power outage or even national power outage. Things that you can be aware of to make sure you're prepared. So mobile networks usually have some kind of, they do have like a backup battery that works for them for a little while through the mobile networks, but that's only about 30 minutes. So people have about half an hour of mobile usage and then it might be lost. And there's also little things to think about, the fact that you can flush your toilet once the power is gone, but once you've flushed it that one time, there's no more flushing of the toilet, because again, that needs power. You might want to try and get some, fill your bath with a little bit of clean water, or have some, as we say, that 3 days water supply is a good thing to have, especially in your emergency kits. So yeah, just being prepared, be ready for mobiles not being useful, maybe having that wind up radio, and make sure if you are thinking about cyber safety that you're only taking information from trusted sources. So national, trusted, well-respected sources. That could be defined in many different ways. I'm not going to give suggestions of which ones to use solely, but just be aware that there is a lot of misinformation out there as well.
Right, thank you, Rhea. Paul, somebody's just pointed out as well, if you're struggling to find audio, it's in the bottom left hand of your screen and you can toggle it on and off. It's a little audio button that you toggle on and off. Sorry, oh, Cara, would you like to come in?
Yes, I just have a quick comment. I'm a farmer, and we're talking about toilet facilities in power outages and water shortages. So we have composting toilets on the farm, and they're actually really easy. If you are camping, you can get a camping loo, and you simply, basically it's a frame with a bucket inside and a nice seat and a lid. So all you need to do is have that with some sawdust, and if you have a garden, you can just dig a hole and put it in that. If you don't have a garden, you can use a black bin liner inside it. Again, use some sawdust, and then knock the whole thing up and put it out for the rubbish. So you're not using your valuable water to flush the loo. So just a farming comment, and that's what we do on the farm outside. Okay.
Thank you. Paul, great. We've got you now. Go ahead.
Hello. Mine's not a churchy contribution at all. I want to alarm us to the fact that there's going to be such an upheaval in local government. And I wonder whether those who are talking about the changes have got in mind the issues that we're talking about now. If they disturb the pattern of local government, we may have to unlearn a whole lot of information.
Okay, so you mean that the systems within local government already to support emergency events is going to be disrupted by local government reorganisation? Is that the point?
I think everything will be disrupted if they make the changes that are talked about at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Rhea, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, there is obviously some possible changes coming up, especially with how councils sit district-wise, county, city-wise, that might be incoming. We don't know what that's going to look like. I myself, within the British Red Cross, kind of sit as a voluntary sector rep within the local resilience forums, or for Derbyshire, the Derbyshire Resilience Partnership. So some of those conversations may alter slightly, but we're always planning, reviewing plans, training, exercising on evacuations, power outages, all of those emergencies that you might think of. There's dedicated groups within the forums that focus on making sure we as emergency services, category 2s, utilities, and that third sector, voluntary sector, that we're all prepared, ready for incoming emergencies.
Rhea, do you just want to explain, because not everybody will have heard of local resilience forums, what they actually are and who's on them?
Yeah, so local resilience forums are basically like this big multi-agency hive where we come together for meetings with council, emergency services, voluntary sector, utility companies, everyone that kind of has a role within preparing, planning, responding, and recovery. So there'll be a kind of main LRF group. However, there'll be groups that come off that look after certain things. So a humanitarian assistance group, a voluntary agencies group, a risk advisory group, a resilience group. So, and then the right people that need to have those conversations will sit on that group and then feed back into the main LRF. So it's, yeah, it's, as it says, it's a forum of people that plan, review, train, and exercise for to make sure their community is safe from emergencies.
So there's a lot of local government emergency service people already doing stuff behind the scenes to prepare for emergencies, and obviously they're supported by the volunteer teams that Kel has talked about as well. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. Just another comment in the chat was about Kara, you touched on this in your presentation about what the EU is doing, and who seem amazingly organised. Do you want to say a little bit more about how the UK approach could learn from the EU? What should we be doing in the UK that we're not?
Okay, I think the main thing that we should be doing in the UK is stockpiling food for the country. So the government should have reserve stocks of all different types of food. And we always used to have this until quite recently. And then somehow or other it was decided that we could just buy cheap food. You know, if we needed more food, we could just buy it from, you know, foreign sources. Now, we already import sort of 50% of our food anyway, normally. And 25% of that comes from Europe. but it's very vulnerable because you only have to have something like Russia starting the war on Ukraine, and suddenly the price of wheat goes up and the wheat supplies themselves are reduced. And so then we're looking around frantically to try and buy it from somewhere else. And we might not be the highest bidder as a country if that price seems to be too much. So it seems ridiculous to be importing as much food as we do. And we should really be growing our own food and using it more efficiently. And we can't provide all our food for this country eating the diet that we do. So if we want to be self-sufficient in food, we'd have to change our habits considerably. But your original question was what Europe does. And Europe have thought this through, and they've just been quietly stockpiling all different sorts of food, so that whatever happens, they have a buffer for any sort of emergency, whether it's a climate emergency or a political emergency or, you know, a cyber attack or whatever. And they have enough supplies to look after their citizens. And then, of course, as I mentioned, households should be advised to stockpile food themselves, so that if something goes wrong with our just-in-time 7-day supply of food, we can say, okay, well, we can survive a week or 2 weeks or a month. George Bombio apparently has 6 weeks supply of food, maybe more, so that him and his family are okay for that period of time. And I think we need to get the message out there that we need to start looking after ourselves. I would love this government to do what the EU are doing for their citizens, by way of their education, by way of advice, and just general support. So if anyone from government is listening, please take that message away. I would love to see a start made on this, because otherwise I don't really know if anything went wrong exactly what would happen. We'd have another sort of COVID scenario where there were reduced stocks on supermarket shelves and so on. So I think this needs to be discussed so that we can adapt to whatever might come our way.
Okay, thank you. I'm just curious, what kinds of food would be stored then? Presumably dried and like grain or flour, you know, not fresh fruit and veg.
Well,
obviously.
no. So a lot of countries do this. I mean, all sorts of countries all over the world do this. Most countries do this. But we decided we could just play the markets. And obviously, you know, there are financial considerations that are taken into account here. And I think probably the government have been advised that they can and would be able to purchase food at short notice, but that's not necessarily the case. So the types of food, predominantly it would be grain. So there would be huge stores of grain kept. And this has gone wrong for some countries that have kept that too long, whereas the grain's gone off. So you'd have to be very careful that you were sort of cycling this grain through. But I don't know, all sorts of things. But grain would be the main one, I would have thought.
Okay, thank you. And sorry, just to note, Rhea's just put that she chairs the voluntary agencies group for Derbyshire. If you want to volunteer or be part of that group, contact Rhea, and her email's in the chat. Steph, would you like to say something?
I want to say I remember the old government food stores. They used to be near railways and main roads, and they were completely unmarked. There was no sign up saying what they were, but they were the same all over the country. So once you knew what they looked like, you could spot them. And they were managed so that food was kept fresh and it was moved on and changed. But they've long gone. But that's what I wanted to say about food, and certainly that would help a lot, because another thing I want to say is power outages. We lost our power for half an hour recently, and I was astounded at how difficult that made life. I thought because we had a gas cooker that I would be able to boil water on the cooker. I couldn't, because my gas cooker won't work. It's not the ignition. The gas does not come through without power. We have solar panels, but they don't work. The whole solar system just switches off when the grid's not working. So I was shaken really at how much difference that made. I couldn't even heat water except by a camping stove. I have got a little camping gas stove, and so I could do that. And the other thing is, people pointed out that there may be food in the supermarkets, but if the power goes, the refrigerators don't work, the freezers don't work, the tills don't work, the doors don't even open because they're electric. The tills don't work. Things go really badly wrong when you don't have power, and losing power is so much a part of all the other emergencies, storms, floods, whatever caused power cut. I wanted to say that. And then I want to say, I see Anita still wants to say something, but I want to start talking about what we do next. This looks like a lot of work. And the little group that put this on are tiny. We can't do much more than organise these talks and events and visits, but we need to have a bigger group. We need people to come forward who will take on the tasks that have been highlighted in these talks. So if you can, make contact through the email, through Lisa's email or my email, Chesterfield Climate Alliance or Transition Chesterfield, and want to join a new initiative to start planning for emergencies. There's lots of advice out there. The Red Cross do a kit for making climate emergencies. Other people produce advice how to make a climate emergency plan. What you do in the plan, the first thing you have to do is you start looking at what the risks are, where the risks are, who's at risk, and then you start looking at the resources, the assets in the community. And it can be broken down to a small community like a street, but it can also be networked into a much larger community like Chesterfield and North East Derbyshire, or Derbyshire as a whole, or the East Midlands as a whole. But you've got to start somewhere. That's what I wanted to say.
Thanks, Steph. And yeah, we'll send this out with the resources. But as Keller's put, there's also, we desperately need flood wardens in Derbyshire, and there's volunteer groups, existing volunteer emergency groups as well that need, we need more volunteers basically. Anita, and then I'll bring Rhea and Cara back if they want to comment after Anita. Go on, Anita.
Okay, yeah. The thing I put my hand up was about going back to your food storage and what have you. My parents used to stockpile massive tins of marmalade, because obviously if you get into a food shortage situation, you're at risk of not getting enough vitamin C, which is going to cause bones and skin problems and what have you. So they used to, as well as stocking flour and sugar and what have you, they used to stock these huge tins. They used to call it marmade. I think it was the stuff that you actually made into marmalade, but it had all the vitamin C in it. So, when you're looking at storing things, don't just concentrate on your carbohydrates and what have you. Make sure you've got some kind of dried or tinned or some kind of preserved fruit in there. And the other thing I would say with regard to your flood wardens and so on, I'm on my local parish council as well, and the parish council I have is split between two villages. So one of us is on higher ground. My lucky residence is on the higher ground. The second one is quite low down, and we have flood reserves, sandbags, and what have you down there. And we're recruiting as a parish council for flood warnings. So just to get more recruits, maybe talk to your parish councils. I know Chesterfield is obviously it's a town and it's kind of got its own status, but the smaller communities will have parish councils that you can go out to and speak to.
Thanks, Anita. Yeah, no, parish councils they're a good resource, or any council really. There are people there whose job it is to help and liaise with residents. Rhea or Cara, was there anything you wanted to come back on? on any of those points?
Yes, I'm very impressed by Steph's talk just now. I really think that we're at the beginning of a community movement, so that we join together to look after each other in climate emergencies, and also to take action by communicating our concerns and the fact that we want to be involved, we want to be informed, we don't want to be left in the dark. So we need, I think, to make ourselves a group, maybe some sort of action group, I don't know, and we need to be talking more to local politicians and our representatives and saying, actually, we don't want to be kept in the dark. We don't want to wait till 2028 for the next plan. We don't want to wait another 2 years for whatever nature recovery project has been talked about. We want to be involved, and we want to have things happening a lot more quickly, and we want to know what's going on, and just have better communication vertically. So yeah, that's what I think my conclusion is.
Thank you. Any more questions? Or I think, Steph, did you want to say any concluding remarks, or was that what you wanted to say there?
Yes, go on, Steph.
I think I've made enough noise. But yeah, I do think there are lots of ways we could follow this up. As I say, I discovered the toolkit that was on the Red Cross website. Just looking at different Red websites recently as preparation for this, the Red Cross, you know the obvious things, but if you dig deep, there's so much more. The Met Office has amazing amount of information, which I didn't know they did, research that they've done, reports and so on. That if you've got the time and the energy to look this up, the knowledge is there for the taking, and advice, but it needs coordinating, and that's a big job. So yeah, that's the next step. My idea with next thing was to have something like an exhibition where we actually had a day that people could come to and physically see things representing some of these things, and maybe get the floodmobile come, although that's quite expensive.
Can I just say, Derbyshire County Council put on a flood warden presentation, like say it was either back in the summer or the early autumn. They had Red Cross in there, I believe. We were there as Derbyshire 4x4 response. They also had the Met Office, who went through on how they predict where the floods are going to be in the area, where they liaise with the environmental council, the environmental agencies. They were all there, police, fire. There was a lot of people at that meeting. So if you want to be in a place where you can talk to people, the councillors there, Derbyshire, the newly elected as well, all the Derbyshire County councillors were there. It was a lot of people talking about flooding, of how it's going to be done. So if you want to be in a place where, to see what's going on, that was a good place to be. So I just thought I'd put that in there.
Thanks, Kel. I guess it's how do we, I mean, a lot of us are all in the climate movement, but we didn't know about that. So I think there's a communication issue here as well, isn't there? We're all involved in lots of different groups and activities, but it's just bringing it all together.
Yeah. If you go through, I think it's on Derbyshire County Council website for flood wardens. Like I say, it's a fairly new initiative. We only knew about it because of our work. We get called out as Derbyshire 4x4 response to move people. Storm Babette, we moved everybody from the Lighthouse Church to the rest centre, and then the rest centre onwards. We even took people's animals to kennels and things like that. So there's a lot of people in the background that the council can call on to do the work. And it's just getting involved. Like you say, I think the council is pretty bad at, they put the odd social media post out. I don't think they really highlight it. I guess it's resources, what they can do as well. So anyway, I just thought I'd put that out there.
Thank you. Yeah, it sounds like there is good stuff going on. I think it just needs to be better communicated and coordinated, doesn't it? But sorry, Steph, did you want to come in?
I want to say, yeah, that is great to have things like that. But in a way, you can't just have it once. You've got to go on and on and on, doing it, taking it to different places and doing it over and over again. that's how you really reach people. And going out to where people are, as Sandra's always saying, rather than expecting them to come to you.
Sorry, Cara, did you want to come in?
Yes, I think a final comment is people that are concerned about the climate crisis maybe watch the National Emergency Briefing film when it comes out. We're hoping to put it on in the locality over in the Matlock area as well as Chesterfield. And, you know, join in, get involved with that and get involved with the Climate Majority Project as well. These are two great organisations that I think are going to make a big difference.
Thank you. And the last word from Rhea.
Just thought having something in person would be a good next step, and kind of maybe marketing it as a building connections to build resilience, getting to know your community networks would be a great way to do that.
Very good idea. And, you know, Steph's put out a very good call to action there. And obviously we'll be following this up. But thank you so much to our two speakers tonight who've been absolutely brilliant. If you could, you know, if you go to React, you can do a little clap icon. But thank you so much. They were really clear, brilliant presentations. And although it's very scary, and you know, I've certainly learned a lot, and it's given us a lot of ideas. But there are resources out there. There are people out there doing things. We need to join together and work together better. Thanks to Steph and Peter for doing the IT. Thanks to Sandra and Shruti, who's not here. A lot of people work behind the scenes to put this together. And thank you all for coming this evening. And I hope you've learnt a lot. And I hope you will get involved and volunteer and do something. So good night to all of you then.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thanks all. Good evening.
Bye-bye.
Good night.